In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most important topics to take your magic to the next level. I'm going to share with you some of the secrets and debunk some of the myths that will allow you to perform mind-blowing effects and completely alter the way your spectators perceive the effects that you perform. What is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to another video. Today I've got How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 22, all about recapping. Now, recapping I think might be one of the most important topics we've covered in this series. This is something that if you watch any of the videos I've talked about, this will be that thing that will really take your magic to the next level. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about recapping and how to use it properly and what kind of things you should say and shouldn't say, and so I'm going to kind of cover all that and give you guys my philosophies on that in this video. Now, if you guys are interested in some private lessons one-on-one from me, getting some help with anything, it could be the cull, propless mentalism, bill at work, any sleights or effects you've ever seen me perform, I can help you one-on-one. Go check out the link in the description, or if you'd like to learn some of the best mentalism content here on YouTube, the best mentalism effects, the fundamentals, and a ton of extra bonus ideas and masterclasses from me, you can go join my mentalism membership right here or linked in the description. But let's not waste too much more time, guys, and let's jump right in to the video. Hey guys, I just finished editing tomorrow's video. Today's Saturday, February 8th, and I just wanted to jump on here and say, if you are going to be at Blackpool BMC 2025 in a couple of days, send me an email, send me your contact info, send me your phone number. I want to put together a meetup with all you guys, a little jam session where we can all kind of sit down, jam some magic one of the evenings. Haven't sorted it all out yet, but if you want to be part of that, if you want to meet up, send me your info and I will be in touch with the details. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. All right, guys, so let's start off with what is recapping. Essentially, recapping is the idea of summarizing an effect. Generally, this is done near the end of the effect, usually right before the final climax of the routine, before the major moment of magic, and it's essentially just summarizing and reiterating what has already happened to get you to the point where you are now. Oftentimes you'll highlight the key moments and emphasize some of the big things, the important things that happen throughout the effect. You don't need to necessarily explain every single thing, but oftentimes you're looking to highlight those key moments of the effect, the things that take the magic up to the next level and make it feel more impossible. You really want to highlight those things. Now, one thing that's really important to distinguish between what I would say recapping is and just summarizing the effect. To me, summarizing is just kind of completely one-for-one re-explaining what happened. It's not all that exciting. You're literally just telling them what happened. Recapping, in a way, is a bit more brief than a summary. Again, you're highlighting those important moments, but the key difference is that you are actually embellishing some of those key moments very often. So you're taking these little moments and these moments where something maybe happened a certain way and you're embellishing it and framing the events in a way that highlight the impossibility of the routine, right? So let's say you shuffled the cards for a moment and that allowed you to do some kind of card control, and then the spectator just cut the cards. Well, you could recap that and say, remember, you shuffled the cards, right? So it's maybe not 100% how it actually happened, but we're emphasizing and exaggerating that moment to kind of alter the reality of what happened. This is going to allow us to create a new frame on the effect, a new lens in which the spectator views it from, and really blow them away. There are a ton of powerful techniques that you can do with this sort of recapping and reframing the effect. I've kind of discussed framing in another video on how to make your magic better, and I think there's a key difference that's important to highlight. Recapping is something that you do to help create that frame. Framing is the overall picture of the effect, how we can change it. But there's other things you can do besides just recapping, but recapping is probably the most important thing when it comes to reframing your effect. So that's kind of the difference. You use recapping to achieve the frame, to reframe the effect how you want it to be perceived. So recapping can happen at different moments of the trick. It can happen at the end, which is most typical, usually, like I said, right before that major climax, but it can also happen during the routine. Sometimes it's really good so that you can do what's called callbacks, where if you emphasize something in the moment, then that's something that's going to stand out in the mind of the spectator. And now when you call back to that moment in the recap, that link of, hey, yeah, that is actually what happened, is going to be stronger in their mind and help sort of enhance the reactions. A little bit later on in the video, when I start to talk about some strategies to use recapping, I'm going to dive into this a little bit deeper. Now, this is starting to touch on my whole stating the obvious video, which I'll link that up here. It's a very important video in the How to Make Your Magic Better series. I have some potentially controversial thoughts on the subject, but I think you really need to emphasize and be very clear and sort of state the obvious when you're performing. A lot of magicians magicians say don't do that. Don't just, you know, explain what's going on. But there are a lot of moments that I think you do want to do that for. I'm going to jump into that a little bit later in the video and explain kind of my philosophy on why that is. But ultimately, I think it's a really important thing, and it allows you to kind of tie back your recapping into that stating of the obvious. And it allows those moments to really be clear and emphasized in the spectator's mind that you want them to remember. Quick pause in your regularly scheduled program. I just want to let you guys know that I offer one-on-one virtual private magic lessons, perfect for beginner to advanced magicians and mentalists looking to improve their technique, sleight of hand, learn any of my best effects, learn the fundamentals of card magic, mentalism, or absolutely anything. This is the best value in magic in terms of getting you to become a better magician. I can sit with you one-on-one, tell you exactly what you personally need to work on, and teach you a bunch of the incredible material that I perform in my professional repertoire. If you decide to take a lesson with me, you will get 24/7 personal contact, you'll get custom curriculums, personally tailored effects. Every lesson you will get a downloadable recording, giving you something you can keep with you forever and always return to learn at your own pace. Over on my website, I have a bunch of reviews and testimonials, both video and written form, that you guys can check out. And if you'd like some more info or to book a lesson, all you have to do is head over to the link in the description, or feel free to send me an email at rf.sleights@gmail.com. Now, back to the video. Now, why is this important? Well, the most obvious answer is it can help strengthen the effect through that reframing that we just touched on. We're essentially taking that sequence of events that happened in the past, right? Because we're recapping what happened, and we're altering the reality in the spectator's mind of how it actually went down. We're creating false memories. False memories are the idea of memories that are close to reality, but they're not exactly how the trick went down. And one thing that I urge you to try out is, if you perform a trick for friends or family, ask them right after you perform the trick, can you try to describe what happened? And then hear how they describe the trick, and I'm sure you will pick up on some moments that you know, and it's almost funny, you kind of know that's not at all how the trick really happened. Like, I touched the cards, and even though they won't mention that, right? Or they'll say, I picked any card when it was a force, or, you know, whatever they say. You'll notice these discrepancies, and then wait a couple of days and ask them again, and you'll see how, without you doing anything, the effect is slowly changing in their mind. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but I think one of the biggest reasons is sort of a fact that I touch on in the stating the obvious video, is that spectators, they're just not as familiar and as comfortable with magic props, obviously magic methods, and some of these tricks can be either hard to follow, or, you know, frankly, the audience members just aren't that interested in remembering every little moment of the trick. They just want to experience the magic. So when they try to remember it, it's not going to be as clear in their head a lot of the time. And so it's super important to kind of think about how you want to leave that memory with the audience, because what you say and what you emphasize is what's going to stick with them. The language you use are the things that they're going to latch onto. It's easy for them to latch onto the words that we say. It's a little bit more tricky for them to watch a piece, a whole avenue, which is magic, that they're not as familiar with. It's harder for them to even put that into words that they could describe. You know, he did the thing with, that was like a piece of cloth, and he did the thing, then there was the cards. You know what I mean? Like, they can't really describe it as well, so naturally it's going to be much harder for them to remember what happened. So it's important that you describe it in a clear, concise way, in the way that you want them to remember it, and that's what they're going to be focused on the most. Now, one thing that I think is super important when it comes to recapping that I think is often overlooked. I think when people talk about recapping, they're always thinking about false memories and reframing. But I think a really important thing that it does is clarify the effect for the audience. And kind of tying into what I just talked about, the audience is often not as clear with what's going on. Again, you perform an A-can to a room of magicians, they'll remember every single step, the way you handled the cards, if there was any restrictions, they'll remember every detail, right? Because we are familiar with all of this. It's not just about the methods, it's just the comfortability with a deck of cards. I don't even know if that's a word, but regardless, it's how comfortable we are with the ideas in magic, the plots, the premises, all these things. We're so comfortable with it, we don't have to give it a second thought. But you have to remember, your spectators are not at all the same. And it's not saying that spectators are dumb, not at all. They're just not familiar with it. If you go watch a sport that you're not familiar with, let's say you're a big fan of American football and you sit down and you watch it, you'll have no problem following the game, understanding everything that's going on. And there's a good chance, you know, I'm sure you can experience it. If there's something you're passionate about, like let's say this American football game, you can probably, you know, months, years down the line, remember so many of the plays and events that happened during that specific game, the highlights, all that stuff. It comes to you very naturally. But if you are now someone who doesn't really like, say, soccer, and you go watch a soccer game, you're going to be confused. You're not going to be following everything. Okay, yes, they scored a goal. Yes, he kicked the ball to this guy, but you're not going to appreciate the whole game. You're not going to understand every element. And you're definitely going to start to struggle to remember a month or a year down the line what really happened in that game, right? You're just not comfortable with it. It's the same thing with magic. All that to say, we've all been there when we present a piece of magic, maybe one that's a little bit harder to follow, and we get to the end, we do the reveal, and the spectator doesn't react all that well. It could be the best trick ever, but if they don't understand it, it's gonna fall flat, right? Magic happens in the spectator's mind. So we need to make sure that the effect is clear in their mind, and recapping is a great way to do it. Let's say we've just performed a more complicated effect, something where cards are jumping and changing and switching, and finally you're at a moment where you have two cards on the table, and this one's supposed to be their selected card and this one's supposed to be a random card, but the cards have switched, so now this is their selected card and this is the random one. Well, after all that's happened, and hey, we'll put this card down here, and maybe this one's been sitting for a couple of minutes where you did something else, if you just say, and here's your card, there's a lot to be desired there. It's very flat. You don't even know if they understand why that's impressive. Maybe they thought their card was over here. Maybe they didn't even realize that this was supposed to be the 6 of diamonds, but now it's the ace of clubs, right? So it is extremely important that before you do that reveal, you say, think about this. You shuffled the cards. You remember at the very beginning, I set down your card over here, and then at the end, we set down that 10 of hearts over here. But incredibly, with just a snap, your card jumps over here and the 10 of hearts jumps over here, right? That is going to make a huge difference because the audience is now going to be brought up to speed. They're going to be in the moment and they're going to be ready to react to the incredible magic because they actually understand it. So it's very important to kind of give this understanding to your audience and allow them to follow along, because ultimately if they can't follow along, there's just no magic to begin with. And it's great because you kind of do the recapping right before that final climax, so you can really make sure that in that moment they fully understand what's about to happen, and then the magic happens. It's also a great way to kind of manage attention and sort of misdirect through this kind of recapping, where you can have them focus on the things you want them to focus on, forget the things you don't want them to focus on, and really just direct their attention and manage their attention on those specific elements of the trick that you want them to remember. And we've talked about false memories and why it's so important, but the nice thing about creating these false memories, which is so important with recapping, is when people retell our magic, right? Humans, we have this innate want to always make other people feel what we felt in that moment. So when you try to retell a magic trick, especially one that you're not as comfortable with and you're struggling to remember as an audience member, you go tell your friends, your family about this experience, you want them to feel how impressive it was. Otherwise, you'll just kind of look stupid. Like you say, yeah, he took a card and it changed, and they'll be like, okay? Like they'll never be able to connect with you on the level because they weren't there. So what we tend to do as people is we overemphasize and we embellish the stories so that other people can try to feel what we felt. And so if you kind of play into that with your recapping and give them some of these false memories, now when they go tell other people, it'll be the false memories plus the embellishment, and you'll just seem like an absolute killer, right? The craziest magician ever. And that's really good because that'll, word of mouth is always a great way to get more gigs and just get your name out there, right? So it's always a good thing. So now, how do you do this recapping? So first of all, I think you want to keep it concise. You don't want to say, a complete novel about what happened in the trick. You just want to think about the key moments that are important to make the trick feel impossible. So my tip for this would be, think about what makes the trick impressive for you as a magician. Let's say an A-can. We're doing any card at any number. What about that particular A-can is so impressive? So a lot of people really like my J30 A-can, and it's an A-can that I think is the best A-can that you can do just because of all the kicker endings and how fair it feels and all different ways you can play with it. It's just so amazing. So if you want to learn that, I'll link it up here. It's available on my website. A lot of the things that people say they like about it and the things that I like about it are the things that you'd want to think about and retell to your spectator. So what do we like about it? It's hands off the deck the whole time. The spectator does all the dealing. The spectator just thinks of a number. They don't even have to say it out loud. They could just deal the number, but it's usually never said out loud until right before they do the dealing. The card feels like a super fair selection. The audience all creates it together. So those are some of the key points that makes this effect super fooling. And as a magician, I think it's what makes that effect super impressive. So those are the things I want to highlight when it comes to recapping. So we've just went through all the process. They've named a card, they're thinking of a number, and now the spectator's holding the deck, and I say, think about this. You named any card you wanted, right? We created this card as a group. Everyone made every decision. So that's one point. You're holding onto that deck. I've never touched the cards. You're just thinking of a number. You've never said this number out loud. Literally no one could know what number you're thinking of. So there's a couple of things that I just did there in that scripting. I hit those key points that make the effect impressive, but I didn't spend too much time saying, oh, so I had you name a color, you name a suit, you name a value, oh, and then you picked the number, and then you multiplied it by this number, right? There's not all of what exactly happened, but I'm highlighting the key moments. The other thing is the embellishment. I say, think about it. You chose any card you want. As a group, we created this card entirely together, which is true, but there is obviously some control on my end when it comes to that selection process. And then when it comes to the number, I'm saying you just thought of a number. It was never said out loud, which is true. But again, I'm highlighting these important moments, and I say things like, I never touched the cards, where maybe I did hold the cards for a minute before I handed them the deck. And when I say you just thought of the number, well, the truth is that they thought of a number and then multiplied a few other random numbers with it, which is true, and it's all very random, but I'm just gonna kind of streamline that and say, you just thought of a number. And again, that's just gonna feel so impressive and a little bit of embellishment. And now when they think back, I just thought of a card, he named the number, suit, value, I just thought of a number and he just dealt to the number and the card was there. Then it ends up being a blank deck as a kicker, and then, you know, whatever other kicker endings you want to add. You know, you can show that the number in the card was predicted from the very start, whatever it is. It's concise, it's quick to the point, doesn't get too boring, right? You don't want them to lose attention, but it is highlighting those key moments that are really important. I think one thing that is overlooked a little bit that's important is kind of making this feel natural. With recapping, I don't think you want it to ever feel too scripted. There's a couple of reasons. One, it comes off as inauthentic, and when your recapping feels scripted, well then it's like, okay, he's just saying these things. This is what he says every time. That's how it's gonna come off to your spectator. It's not gonna be as believable. They're not gonna buy it. You want it to feel organic and off the cuff, but the other thing it does is allows you to kind of take in those moments that are gonna be those one-off moments, or very specific moments to this particular routine. There might have been something that happens where you want to emphasize that it doesn't always happen in your routine, but it happened this time. Like, let's say we're doing an equivocate. The spectator could choose red or black, right? And if they say black, well then I have a clever line to follow up with to make it seem like we've gotten rid of the black cards. But if they say red, in my recapping now, I can actually target that specific line. Let's say I'm trying to force the Jack of Hearts and they said black, queen, and king, and I use the equivocate to kind of eliminate those. Obviously the scripting would still be very clever, but in the recapping I wouldn't say, think about it. You could have named any card, and what was the card you said again? You know, I wouldn't say that, because that's not really the one they said, so I don't want to emphasize that moment. I wouldn't say, and you could have named any color, and you said, well, I can't say black because we're on a red card now, right? So I couldn't do that. Whereas if they happen to say red and Jack, now I can say, think about it. You named any card. What was the card you named again? Jack. Yeah, crazy. And you could have said, you picked red, you picked hearts, whatever you wanted. So by not having a perfect script for your recapping, you can work in those moments that change. So how I would script the recapping is just point form. So just the points you want to hit about the particular effect. I want to hit shuffle deck. I want to hit freely chosen number, freely chosen card. That's the beats I want to hit. No like full scripted sentences. I just want to hit those beats, and then I'll just let the rest flow organically and fill it in with those specific unique moments. And another thing that I think is super important is to get the spectators involved in your recapping. Have them confirm these things. If they shuffled the cards, you remember shuffling that deck. Let them say yes. You remember, you said Jack, you named hearts, right? All these moments. And a little tip on that whole equivocate thing. Let's say that they said red, hearts, and then queen and king, but I was trying to force the Jack of Hearts. Well, I would say it like this. I would say, think about it. We created a card together. We chose a card. You said red. You could have picked any suit. You said hearts, and we ended up on this one card, the Jack of Hearts, right? So you see how I emphasize with the spectator. I said, and you said what suit again? They'll say hearts. You pick red. It could have been any card. We ended up on the Jack. But I don't ask the person who named the value queen and king to give me that emphasis. So you're picking and choosing those important moments. But it's great to get the spectators involved. You remember shuffling those cards, right? You did this. That's gonna solidify those memories even stronger, and it's really gonna strengthen the impact of the effect. Now, sort of the controversial part of this video would be my whole stating the obvious philosophy. Now, I am a huge proponent of this. You'll often hear magicians say, don't say I'm shuffling the cards when you're shuffling the cards. Yes and no. Okay, you don't want to say, look, as I move the cards and I shift them from top to bottom so you can see it's shuffling. You don't want to be that refined with it, but you could be very loose and just say, look, I'm going to give the cards a quick shuffle. Now here, can you give the cards a quick shuffle for me? Great. Now you can see you've mixed up those cards. They're in a completely random order. That means that this deck is probably in an order that's never been done before. So now I want you to name a number for me. It can be absolutely any number. Okay, now reach in and you're gonna touch a card. It could be any card you want. You can touch this one, any one. Okay, great. This one right here, just remember that card. Perfect, and I'll lose it again. I'm gonna shuffle it into the deck one last time, right? If I'm doing it in this way, what I'm doing is, again, I'm breaking down the effects for the spectator, making it as simple to digest. No, I'm not saying they're stupid. Yes, they understand what a card shuffle is, but they might not understand the impact of a card shuffle on any card at any number, right? So by me highlighting these things, and you saw what I did there, it's very brief. It's very much just here, I'm gonna shuffle, why don't you shuffle the cards? And I'm kind of starting to recap the effect in the effect. I'm saying things like, think about that. As you shuffle, the cards are in a completely random order that's never been done before. So now these things are clicking in their head. As a magician, when we see a shuffle, we understand the order of the deck is random. And it's not to say they don't, but that's not gonna click with them. They're not gonna think and say, wow, that any card at any number was so much more impressive because the cards were in a random order that has never been done before in the history of the world, right? That's not how a spectator's gonna think. They're just gonna say, wow, my card was at the number. So if we can start to say these things like, that's so impressive, not only because your card was at the number, but because it was in a shuffled deck, all this kind of stuff, it's going to help enhance the effect. So stating the obvious, it helps break down the effect, make it very understandable for your spectators, because that's a problem. We have a lot of times as magicians, our effects aren't clear enough. So it helps you really lock it down. And then how this all ties into recapping, which is super important, is once you've stated those moments in the routine, during the routine, you've dropped those little nuggets, you can call back to them now, and they'll be fresh memories. They'll easily be able to remember, oh yeah, I did shuffle the cards, because they were emphasized in the moment. So you can call back to this, and it just strengthens that memory so much more, strengthens that frame, and really hits it out of the park. So combining stating the obvious, recapping, callbacks, and the right frame is how you take your effects to levels that are out of this world. You can take the simplest effects and take it to the absolute next level. So now let's look at a couple of examples of recapping. So first I'm going to show you kind of the tail end of a performance of that any card at any number I was just talking about. What I want you to pay attention here is the scripting, how I recap each moment before he's about to deal the cards, before I reveal the blank deck. All these things, there's always recapping before those important moments, before all those big climaxes. I do a bit of recapping, and then you can see kind of what I say in those moments and the things that I call back to. So let's check that out now.
And that leaves us with?
The Jack.
The Jack. Now think about that. You guys made every single decision all the way along. And you have a number in mind. You've never said it out loud. He's been holding onto that deck of cards the whole time. What's the number you're just thinking of for the first? 30. I want you to deal face down 30 cards into my hand. Just deal them face down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Stop at 29 for me. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Now wait. That is number 30. And you said what card was it?
Jack of Diamonds?
Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts. Jack of Hearts.
Jack of Hearts.
Flip it over.
No.
There's no way. Flip it over.
Bush. No way! Tabarnak!
Guys, the interesting thing is, hold on to that. The interesting thing is, sometimes I said, you know, perfect coincidences and perfect things come together and create really powerful moments. And you guys being here, me seeing you, me stopping you guys is maybe a lot more powerful than you realize. You might be thinking, well, it's just a card, it's just a number. But it's actually the only card and the only number that you could have said. Flip the deck over. Spread through them.
Hey, what? Yeah. No way.
It's actually the only card in the entire deck. Yo, Ben, c'est quoi, Ben?
Hey, sont les cartes, tabarnak? Non. What? No.
So now that you've seen that, I hope you kind of get a sense of how I recap, what I kind of say, and how you can create these false memories and false frames. So let's end off this video with a few tips on how to improve your recapping. I think you want to practice that conciseness. You want to rehearse the recapping a little bit, write out the bullet points for the routines that you want to hit, and then just kind of practice them a little bit and work on making them efficient and impactful. Think about the word choice you're going to use. There are words that are really good to use with laymen, like impossible, incredible, just thought of, any possibility, right? All these like buzzwords, there are good ones I was talking about there. Really like high, kind of catchy, poppy words that are really gonna stick in their mind. Things like clean, fair, practical. These are magician terms. Keep those out of your recapping. They don't mean anything to a spectator. Things that are, you know, big, that represent something good, like impossible, incredible, all these big, amazing, you know, whatever it is, use those in your recapping. Avoid the sort of magician-y terms. I'd say study other performers. There are a lot of performers who do this really well, and I think watching these performances and seeing their techniques can be something that's great. In all of my street magic videos, I'll link one up here that I think is really good. You can see how I recap every effect that I do. That's a strategy that I employ all the time before every climax. It's good to see how different effects at different moments when I do the recapping. So go check that out. I would highly recommend you take a peek, and you can kind of think about how to improve your own recapping in that way. You know, and finally, I would take a simple effect, like perhaps having a card selected, controlling it to the top, doing a double lift and showing them it's not their card, and then placing that card in their hand, which ends up being their card, and just having a transposition. And in the moment, once you've set their card in their hand and they believe it's the other card, simply just say, think about this. You could have picked any card. Maybe you let them shuffle. You shuffled the deck, and I just showed you that king of whatever, hearts, and I placed that in your hand. That's right there. I want you to imagine now that that king of hearts begins to change, right? You're just creating that recap. So practice with a simple effect. I think that'll really benefit you. Now, if you'd like to learn an incredible self-working card trick that will allow you to take the tips you've learned in this video, fully focus on the presentation and apply that recapping, go check out this tutorial right here. This is the perfect effect to practice what we've learned today. All right, guys, that is it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think there were a lot of great tips here. Let me know what your favorite tip is down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. If you'd like a private lesson or to join my Mentalism membership, links are down in the description. And with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.